from Washington, D.C., this is Balance of Power with Joe Mathieu.
Washington responds to a dark day in politics. Welcome to the Thursday edition as the aftermath of Charlie Kirk's assassination rolls into the 24th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. I'm Joe Mathieu in Washington. Glad you're with us on Bloomberg TV and radio. Over the next hour, we're going to bring you to the White House for the very latest, and we're going to talk it out with Congressman Bryan Steil, the Republican from Wisconsin, will join us as well. Congresswoman Haley Stevens, the Democrat from Michigan, as we try to make sense of the last 24 hours. And we start, as always, with a look at Wall Street, his view on the markets. Charlie Pellet is at World Headquarters in New York. Charlie, what do you have?
I thank you very much, Joe Mathieu. Indeed, looking at records right now on the S&P 500 index, the Dow, NASDAQ as well. NASDAQ 100 index pushing higher. We got that relatively tame inflation reading this morning, combined with more signs of job cooling. Bottom line, all adding up to speculation that the Fed will indeed be slashing rates for the first time this year when policymakers meet next week. So the S&P right now close to session highs 65.80. That is a gain of 48 points, up 0.7%. Dow Industrials up 567 now, up 1.2%. The NASDAQ Composite Index up 128 for NASDAQ, an advance right now of 0.6%. Our Mag 7 Index pushing higher by 0.8%, with the 10-year right now at 4.00%. The 2-year 3.51%. Gold lower, little change, down 0.1% right now. The precious metal 36.36 the ounce, and Bitcoin up 0.7% right now, 114,460 on Bitcoin. West Texas Intermediate crude oil, by the way, down 1.9%, 62.44 a barrel. A downgrade for UPS at B of A as small package tariffs inflict pain. Shares of UPS, so they're higher right now by 0.4%. Rival FedEx also gaining in today's session, up now by 1.4%. Recapping stocks higher, looking at a record, the S&P up 0.7% for on-demand news 24 hours a day. Subscribe to Bloomberg News now wherever you get your podcasts. And back we go to Washington. Once again, your host, here he is, Joe Mathieu.
Charlie, thank you so much. We'll hear more from Charlie Pellet in about 20 minutes with his view on Wall Street here. The Thursday trade looking pretty good so far. As we talk politics here in Washington, welcome to the Thursday edition of Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio. I'm Joe Mathieu, tracking President Trump from Washington to New York today. He started his day on this 11th of September at the Pentagon. You saw it and heard it live here on Bloomberg earlier this morning. The ceremony at the Pentagon that takes place annually. He did make a few remarks to reporters there, but off camera, off microphone. We may well hear from the president later on as he travels to New York to attend the Yankees game this evening. Vice President Vance was at the World Trade Center site this morning along with other dignitaries. But the president did address the nation last evening, not live. He recorded a video from the Resolute desk in the Oval Office to condemn the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Here's part of what he said.
I am filled with grief and anger at the heinous assassination of Charlie Kirk. My administration will find each and every one of those who contributed to this atrocity and to other political violence. It's long past time for all Americans and the media to confront the fact that violence and murder are the tragic consequence of demonizing those with whom you disagree day after day, year after year, in the most hateful and despicable way possible.
The president went on to say a lot more, in fact, condemning what he referred to as the radical left for the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and said much more to reporters this morning. In fact, the president's going to be speaking with Kirk's family, and that's where we start with Bloomberg's Tyler Kendall, our Washington correspondent on the North Lawn of the White House. Tyler, what else can you tell us?
Yeah, Joe, a very solemn day here at the White House, which started with President Trump traveling to the Pentagon to deliver remarks remembering the lives of those lost in the 9/11 attacks 24 years ago. And he started his remarks by actually commemorating Charlie Kirk and announcing that he intends to award him with the Presidential Medal of Freedom. He said that that ceremony date would be announced shortly. He then came and he spoke briefly with us reporters who were there at the Pentagon, and as you mentioned, he confirmed that he will be speaking with Kirk's family later this afternoon. And when asked what sort of updates he's been getting on the search for the shooter, who still remains at large. He did call it a virtual manhunt, in his words, since we know that the FBI is working very closely alongside state and local officials in this investigation. We did get an update in the last hour, though, a pretty significant one, the FBI releasing photos of the suspected gunman, 2 photos that were taken from the campus at Utah Valley University. We also learned a few other updates when it comes to the evidence as it's evolving in this case, including that it appears authorities think that they found the weapon that was used to kill Kirk. The special agent in charge saying that they found a high-powered bolt-action rifle in the wooded area near the attack. Now, still a lot of different pieces that need to be pieced together here, Joe, because as you well know and covered last night, there were nearly 3,000 people in attendance at that event to hear Kirk speak.
All right, Tyler, thank you so much. Bloomberg's Tyler Kendall with the latest from the White House. And again, if we hear the president speak, we'll bring you his remarks. He'll be leaving the White House for New York a bit later. I just want to make, by the way, one quick correction to something that I mentioned. J.D. Vance changed his plans. Instead of attending the 9/11 ceremony this morning in Lower Manhattan, he is making his tracks to Utah, where he's going to be meeting with members of Kirk's family. We heard from the Speaker of the House earlier as well. We've been hearing from a number of members of Congress, so we should start with the Speaker. This is commentary from Mike Johnson on CNN last night. This news was only hours old. Here's what he said.
There are deranged people in society, and if they are encouraged along this way, they will do dangerous things, increasingly so. We see that. So I think that members of Congress have come to that recognition. I think many of them are nervous, of course. They're public figures. They're exposed all the time, everywhere. We have great security measures for members of Congress, but there's a desire on many people's parts to have more. These are the new realities. I think social media has been a toxin in politics. I think it has added to this vitriol. But at the end of the day, I think the call is that we've got to recognize once more that we are all fellow Americans. We should see one another as colleagues and fellow citizens and fellow countrymen, and not as enemies.
The Speaker of the House. As we turn to Bryan Steil, the gentleman from Wisconsin joins us, Republican from the 1st District, who chairs the House Administration Committee. He's live on Capitol Hill today. Congressman, it's really good to see you. We were hoping that we could connect on this today because I think we have a pretty long history of candid conversations. And before I ask you about the security component, which, by the way, is critical to the chairman's committee here, I just wonder what the feeling is like. Everyone who's joined us today talks about the anger that's being felt today on Capitol Hill. Is that what you're feeling?
Yeah, as I received the news yesterday that Charlie Kirk had been shot and killed, it was both a moment where my heart sunk, but also a frustration of this type of political violence. President Trump was shot last summer at a political rally, and then you have Charlie Kirk shot and killed today. And so it's a frustration, but it is also a really sober moment, I think, for a lot of us that knew or interacted with him. He was just such a leader in the conservative movement, inspiring people to stand up and have the courage to stand up for their convictions, in particular on college campuses where he was when his life was ultimately taken.
Well, you know, it's interesting because we talk here on TV and radio. People listen to our conversations. They see you in committee hearings. I've seen you in a hearing room working with Democrats. I've also seen you in the wild at events that take place in Washington, fundraisers and other things that go on here after hours. Congressman, I've seen you interact with people on the other side of the aisle with ease. And part of the conversation that we've been having here on the program, Mike Rounds brought it up, is the disconnect that a lot of people have with Washington, assuming that you're enemies with every Democrat up there. The fact of the matter is you guys work out together, you go out to eat together. It's part of the fabric of this legislative body. And I wonder if we need to talk about that more.
We need to accept that there should be robust debates on policies. But that doesn't mean you need to be disagreeable as a person, right? You can disagree on the underlying policy. And what we have seen is the rhetoric build, in particular, some of the rhetoric against President Trump, I think, has unquestionably crossed the line, a threat to democracy. People have called him a Nazi, et cetera. And it's that type of rhetoric that I think is really dangerous at a period of time where there are individuals who can be encouraged by others to act in a manner, and in particular to take the life of another. We're going to learn more about the criminal that I hope is apprehended and is held to the full extent of the law responsible. But I do think that we see a lot of people playing a dangerous rhetorical game, and we saw the assassination attempt of Trump, and now we saw the killing of Charlie Kirk.
Yeah, there's a lot of dangerous rhetoric out there. And by the way, I've never heard you engage in any of it. But, you know, ask Nancy Pelosi, who Donald Trump also referred to as an evil person. He's called those of us in the media the enemy of the American people. Is that where we need to get to, Congressman? Is it the language that's driving this, or is it more complicated than that?
Well, it's not as simple as just the language, but I do think that there is an element that is trying to incite individuals to act. And again, I don't think it's lost on us that President Trump was shot at, and then Charlie Kirk was shot and killed. And again, if we think about what Charlie Kirk was actually doing, he was actually having a policy debate on a college campus. That is actually really core to our democracy. We should be having those types of robust policy debates. And this action where his life was taken is not only frustrating, but it causes a lot of kind of that anger. And you got to look and say, we need to make sure that there is no place for this type of political violence anywhere in our country.
Mm-hmm. You heard what the speaker said in that cut that we played from CNN, that there's a desire, he said, on many people's parts to have more security, that these are the new realities. You chair the admin committee, and you're intimately familiar with this idea. Congressman, every time somebody gets hurt or threatened or a horrible fatality like this in the political world, it renews the conversation in Washington about whether members like yourself should have security details, or maybe there's another way to secure those who serve in the Capitol. But you also have to go home to the district, and I wonder if it's time to address this new reality.
It was just a couple months ago, following the horrific incident in Minnesota, that we implemented new programs here to provide additional security for members, for staff, and the public at large. But it shouldn't be lost that you can't simply secure your way out of the challenges that we face right now. Again, I'll go back to the President Trump assassination attempt. He had the protection of Secret Service. And so it's not simply security. We do need security. We need to make sure that we're providing that to members, to staff, and to the general public. But there's something deeper going on in our society as well that we have to address.
Well, that's absolutely right. I just wonder, with the enhancements that you made, though, or do you feel they're adequate now, or do you go back to the drawing board after this?
We're continuing to look to make sure that we have the resources that are needed to keep everyone safe here, not only in Washington, D.C., but when they're home in my home state of Wisconsin or across the country. And so we're constantly looking and reviewing our programs, making sure that we're being wise with taxpayer dollars, but to provide that security. And again, it's not just for elected leaders or for public figures. It's also to keep the public safe. The individual who would ultimately lose their life at the president's rally in Pennsylvania was a father who came to attend in his support of President Trump. And so a lot of the security protocols that are in place are not just for the benefit of an elected member or a public figure, but it's the public at large to make sure that these types of events and discourse and conversations are safe for everyone to attend.
Well, yeah, this is a great point that you make. We're spending time with Congressman Bryan Steil of Wisconsin, who chairs the Administration Committee. Just learning from the Associated Press, Congressman, that Charlie Kirk's casket will be flown from Utah to Arizona aboard Air Force Two today. Of course, as we just reported, Vice President J.D. Vance changed his plans to go to Utah to meet with the Kirk family. You know, one of the terrible side effects that we could be talking about here, Congressman, is another conversation you're familiar with. It leads fewer people to want to serve. Do you worry that fewer hands will be raised to run for Congress because of events like this?
Well, it's a challenge. It's a challenge to find individuals of high quality who are interested in stepping up to serve our country. That's true on local school boards. That's true in state houses across the country, and it's true in Capitol Hill as well. It's a challenge. And some of this, right, is the broader challenge that we're having right now as a society to learn how to have a discourse and dialogue with each other about the challenges that we face. I mean, I held a town hall in Wisconsin, and a group, not the whole group, but a group of activist protesters booed the Pledge of Allegiance, to give you a little flavor of how the event started. And so I think there's a moment where we need to be able to reflect and to say we need to have much more productive dialogues about the policies we need to get this country back on track. And we see time and again really hostile rhetoric, in particular hostile rhetoric directed at President Trump, that I think is not only unproductive, but can also be dangerous.
I don't know if you were on the floor when things got hot yesterday, Congressman, but I was just reading about this, emotions boiling over as Representative Lauren Boebert yelled, "Silent prayers get silent results." After a moment of silence, Democrats shouted back about the school shooting in her state. Does that represent the tone up there right now?
I think it represents that there's a lot of raw emotion around the events that we're seeing take place. Like I said, when I received the news, my heart sunk. I was also frustrated as I learned that Charlie Kirk had been shot and killed. I don't think the yelling back and forth is uniquely productive, but what I think we need to do is to sit down and say, how do we have a far more productive conversation? Because there are huge challenges our country faces. And we were looking at a spending lapse at the end of the month. National defense is a massive priority with kinetic wars taking place across the globe. And so these are real serious policy challenges in that we need to engage in that productive dialogue to find solutions. And the incident that took place in Utah is, I think, an example of how some people are reacting rather than engaging in productive dialogue, which is what this country so desperately needs.
Well, I appreciate this conversation, and I wonder if you think this is a Congress that can be productive enough to generate a spending plan, either a continuing resolution or some other form to avoid a government shutdown at the end of this month, Congressman. Can we compartmentalize this enough right now to do something good?
Well, we're going to have to. I think it's imperative that we navigate this to make sure that we keep the government open. If we get into that policy side of that, I think there's a lot of false rhetoric going on right now on the left about the spending debate, in particular on the rescission packages that went through. That's no excuse to shut down the federal government. In fact, that received a majority vote in the House and the Senate was signed into law. We should be looking at ways to save money for the American people at a period of time when the debt and deficit is higher. But pulling us together to make sure that we avoid a shutdown at the end of the month is going to be absolutely essential.
Does the extension of Obamacare tax credits help to pave the way, or has that been shelved for now? This was being discussed as at least a point of negotiation with Democrats.
Well, I think there's a lot of things on the table right now, but at a period of time with massive spending, with our debt increasing, I think we should be looking at ways to reduce spending here in Washington. And so the Biden administration put this sunset in place. Why they did that, you can go ask the Democrats why they built the law as they did. But we have an opportunity and a need to make sure that we keep government funding open. At the end of the month, there's going to be a lot of conversations about what it will take in the United States Senate to get 7 Democrats to come on to this legislation. But it would be negative for the American people if we find ourselves in a shutdown because they refuse to keep the government open.
Yeah, it does feel like we've seen this movie before. We'll see how it ends. Congressman, thank you for your candor and for your dialogue today. It's important to us. Bryan Steil, the Republican representing Wisconsin's 1st District. He chairs the admin committee here in Washington, which, as you just heard, is going to be having a deep conversation about security going forward. We've got more conversations ahead, including one with Congresswoman Haley Stevens, the Democrat from Michigan, and our panel next here on Bloomberg. Challenging conversation today, but we've lined up a number of voices of experience and nuance for you to better understand the context of what we're going through right now in a political world that has been shaken by the assassination of Charlie Kirk against the backdrop today of the 24th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. Yeah, we're hearing about a lot of anger on Capitol Hill and inside the White House, which is going to happen at times like this. As we just discussed, though, with Bryan Steil, the Republican from Wisconsin, conversations are continuing here as they try to find a way forward on government funding along with any number of issues. First lawmaker we spoke with after this news broke on the late edition of Balance of Power yesterday was Senator Mike Rounds, senator from South Dakota, who did not display anger when he spoke with us. In fact, we were struck by his words that everyone should hear. Listen to Mike Rounds and his first reaction to the killing of Charlie Kirk on Bloomberg.
It is an opportunity for us to once again tell the rest of America and the rest of the world that we can have differing points of view and not be violent about it. And so anything that any of us can do to offer as an example the way that we should treat one another with respect, that's a positive thing. I think that's what Charlie Kirk would have wanted to have had happen. And most certainly that's something that I think we should continue to carry on, which is peacefully discuss, have your differing points of view, argue it, debate it. It's healthy for America, but our founding fathers wanted that to be done in such a fashion that we could still be one strong, unified nation, even if we have differing points of view. And there's nothing wrong with having differing points of view.
Well, I appreciate your point of view on that, Senator. We were looking at some polling from Ipsos from back in July that asked voters about political extremism and threats to our democracy. This poll with Reuters showed 27% of Americans ranked political extremism as the most important problem facing the U.S. How about you?
I can just tell you from personal experience here in Washington, we work across some of the most polarized areas in terms of ideas and ideologies. But if you talk to members of the Senate, Republican and Democrat alike, we get along with one another. We have visits with one another. We go to lunch together. We have a prayer breakfast together. We have Bible studies together. We are not enemies. We may have different points of view, but that doesn't get across very often. And so the example that we should be able to offer is one of unity in terms of making America better than what it is today. Our founding fathers said that they wanted to create a more perfect union. They didn't say our union was perfect to begin with. They wanted it more perfect. Well, that's what we should be focused on here. And sometimes in the middle of our strong emotions here, we forget to finish with that particular part of the message, which is regardless of our points of view, we're Americans first. And we treat each other with respect and with dignity. And here in the Capitol, in the offices that we have, I can tell you personally and that behind closed doors, Republicans and Democrats alike get along. We respect one another. We consider each other as colleagues and friends. And we would hope that across America, whether it's a coffee clutch or whether it's a political meeting, a city council meeting, or a state legislative body, that we remember that we are all Americans and that we have a whole lot more in common than we'll ever disagree on.
I hope everyone hears what Senator Rounds had to say, because I'm pretty sure most Americans do not view Washington that way, frequently projected as a city of enemies. We assembled our political panel for their take on this. Jeanne Zaino is back with us, Bloomberg Politics contributor, Democratic analyst, and democracy visiting fellow at Harvard Kennedy School's Ash Center. Republican strategist Greta Joynes is with us as well, policy director of Brownstein Hyatt. Great to have both of you with us, and thank you for being willing to talk about such a difficult material here. Greta, do you take heart in the message from Senator Mike Rounds?
Of course. I think every political persuasion here in Washington wants to have a debate that is based in facts, less on emotion, and hopefully, you know, a comfortable disagreement on places where we can ultimately come together. I am encouraged by his statements. I worked on the Hill for 14 years. Some of my best friends were Democrats when I was up there, and the same with my boss. So I am hopeful and appreciate his thoughts and his comments on all of these topics.
That's the point, Greta. You know what goes on Capitol Hill. You probably have a pretty good sense of the relationship with the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue as well. Real people live here, and real people work on Capitol Hill. Whether you're a staffer or a lawmaker, this is just part of life. How do we transmit that to the rest of the country?
Well, I think Charlie is a great example of trying to bring that across the country. Having respectful debate on college campuses should be a cornerstone of our democracy. And that's why this is so tragic, and I think makes so many Republicans so angry and frustrated to go through an election cycle being called Nazis and fascists and all of these comments that have continued to percolate in political discourse in 2025. I think we were all hopeful post-election we would be able to take a breather and move past this. And clearly that hasn't happened yet.
Jeanne, you spent a good chunk of your time and have spent a good chunk of your career on college campuses. You're also, of course, political science professor at Iona University. And I wonder your thoughts about what this means for campuses. There's reporting now that a series of historically black colleges and universities are in lockdowns today amid reports of threats to campus safety. We're talking about Virginia State University, Hampton University, Virginia Southern University, and A&M College, Baton Rouge, Alabama State University. What are we in for here? And I don't know if you've been interacting with students yet today. I know this just happened, but what are you hearing?
Yeah, it's a very fraught moment on university and college campuses across the country. To Greta's point, Charlie Kirk was doing what he always did very joyfully, which is engage in heated debate, particularly with people who did not agree with him, on college campuses where we encourage a free flow of communication. Of course, that communication has got to be respectful on both sides. And as we hear threats of violence and colleges and university campuses closing, it is so troubling, because one of the great things for all of us who either went to college, work on college campuses, are alums, is the beauty of a college campus is it is open, it is free, you can go in. They are beautiful, beautiful places, particularly this time of the year, to go and think and talk and debate. And to see that shut down is terribly troubling. And I think what's so troubling to young people about what happened yesterday is whether they liked and agreed with or vehemently disliked and disagreed with Charlie Kirk, they grew up with him on social media. And yesterday, they watched him killed on social media. You could not escape that gruesome video. It was everywhere. And we don't know in 2025 what the impact of that is. Is there a contagion of violence? Is this going to increase the number of copycats, which then brings up what you mentioned, which is university security teams. They aren't as big as, say, a president's team. They are trying to manage thousands and thousands of young people peacefully and safely so they can get educated. And this is what they're contending with. They don't have the resources, and that's why this is so very scary.
I'm glad you pointed out that video, Greta. What is the impact of this? Maybe Jeannie's right. It may be immeasurable. It may be abstract right now. But the fact that Americans of all ages, but of course, we're thinking about the young people in this country, we're watching this video within moments of this happening, before headlines broke that he had died. I'll be really honest with you. I wasn't sure it was real when I first saw it because it was so quick. Does that desensitize us? Does it inflame more violence? Does it repulse us? Or is it all of them?
I think it's all of them, really. I think that in particular on the Republican side, I don't believe it desensitizes Republicans. I think it really makes Republicans incredibly, incredibly angry to watch a young father and someone who effectively changed the world with his engagement this past election cycle and propelling Donald Trump to victory to be removed doing what he did best. And in my opinion, doing something that was fundamentally American, which is our strength is in debating ideas and not destroying those ultimately you hold, those that you disagree with. I think that this is a turning point in American politics, and particularly in Republican politics. I hope that the temperature dies down, but it is difficult to see past this right now. And I'm hopeful that J.D. Vance and President Trump and others will bring Republicans together in a moment of really reflection on ultimately what Charlie stood for.
I'm really happy that you're both here today. Greta, thank you for your time and your insights. Greta Joynes, Brownstein, Hyatt, and of course, Jeanne, you know too well as our Bloomberg Politics contributor and a member of this program every day, Democracy Visiting Fellow at Harvard Kennedy School's Ash Center. Thank you for your grace and nuance in a very difficult story here, and it's one that continues to develop before our eyes. We'll keep tabs on these colleges that may be in lockdown at this point and what else may be happening here today in Washington. As we add a Democrat to the mix next, Haley Stevens, the Congresswoman from Michigan, will join us as part of our coverage from Washington, only here on Bloomberg TV and radio. There is a photo out, as you may have seen or heard about today, on Balance of Power, and thank you for being with us here on the Thursday edition on Bloomberg TV and radio. There it is on your screen on TV or on YouTube, the FBI Salt Lake City posting the photo of a man wearing a hat and sunglasses, dark, long-sleeve shirt, jeans, and what appear to be sneakers, climbing a stairwell. Picture was taken from above looking down. We are asking for the public's help identifying this person of interest in connection with the fatal shooting of Charlie Kirk at Utah Valley University, reads the Post. Still at large, although authorities say they have found the weapon. We heard in the most recent FBI update from Bo Mason with the Utah Department of Public Safety. Here's what Commissioner Mason had to say.
That individual appears to be of college age. We are confident in our abilities to track that individual. If we're unsuccessful in identifying them immediately, we will reach out for the public's help and the media's help in pushing those photos. That was a new development overnight, working through the night, studying those cameras. So that's something that's new and that we're working through right now.
Bloomberg News national security reporter Myles Miller joins us with the latest on this investigation. He's at World Headquarters in New York as well. Myles, what do you know?
Yeah, so right now there is an intense manhunt for a suspect in this incident. You saw him there on the screen. And what we know about this suspect as of right now is that he apparently used what's known as a Mauser bolt-action rifle to carry out this attack. We're told by law enforcement sources that he was perched up on that rooftop and that they have recovered a palm print. They're going to be using the bullets and the shell casings left behind, the cartridges, to try to see if they can get a full latent print, which they hope will connect them to this suspect. Now, in incidents like this, you have to hope that a person of interest, a suspect, is in any database or has had their fingerprints run. You saw the picture of this person. They're relatively young, so there's no guarantee that that'll happen. But they have already started to piece together the timeline about how this happened, when he got on the roof. They know that this is the right person, they say, because they are tracking when he jumped off the roof and the track that he took into the woods where that gun was found. We know the ATF did the initial look at that weapon, and then now it's going to go to an FBI lab, and they're going to continue to do that work to try to figure out what the profile is of the shooter and why he would do this, and what the reasoning was behind it. And, you know, we've reported this morning about some of the etchings on some of that stuff that was with the bullets and all of that. That'll be investigated as well to see, you know, what the meaning behind any of that is, and who the suspect is and why he carried out this attack.
Really interesting, the decision to put this photo out now, Myles. Before we start our conversation with Haley Stevens, does that tell you anything about the nature of this investigation and some of the obstacles they may be facing? Yeah,
this is a difficult operation for them. The FBI's Salt Lake City office, not one of their biggest, but one where Kash Patel has put in, you know, a new person to run that office. And so they're going to need all the help they can. Utah is a huge state, and they're going to need all the help they can. Anybody, there's 3,000 people who were in that crowd. They hope that someone saw something, and that always leads to an arrest in these kind of cases.
Well, it's really great to have you on the story, Myles. Thank you so much. Myles Miller with us live from New York. We spoke earlier with Republican Congressman Bryan Steil, who joined us live from Capitol Hill, and we want to reach to the other side of the aisle for the take of Haley Stevens, the Congresswoman representing Michigan's 11th district and a Senate candidate, is with us right now on Bloomberg TV and radio. Congresswoman, thank you so much. We've been specifically reaching out to members with nuance and sensitivity to this topic. You are not a firebrand, which is why we wanted to spend some time with you. There's been a very difficult conversation here politically happening. We don't even have this manhunt resolved, and we're already hearing the blame game get going here. What do you want Americans to know about the way Democrats and Republicans can work together in Washington, or are we beyond that conversation?
Well, what happened yesterday was tragic. It's unacceptable. My heart goes out to the family, the students who were there. Rising political violence is not acceptable, has never been acceptable, and cannot be accepted. And I want to see this temperature in our country get taken down in terms of the political rhetoric and certainly the violence that we're seeing. And I appreciate that. You had a colleague of mine on who is from the other side of the aisle and someone who I engage in political discourse with and who I know quite well, who I came into Congress with. And that's what our country's supposed to be about. It is not supposed to be about seeing violence taking place at this type of level. It's just, we just need to find ways to come together and to take the temperature down.
It's been a lot. We remember Minnesota. We remember the Pelosi's. Of course, we remember Donald Trump. Congresswoman, what does it feel like to be a member right now? The point has been made a couple of times, by the way. There's no progressive equivalent to Charlie Kirk. So a lot of folks are looking to Democratic lawmakers to see what the answer is on the other side of the aisle. Do you feel safe when you're out stumping? You're holding campaign events right now. You're stepping in front of crowds of people. You've got to do your business walking around Washington here, and a lot of people know who you are. Do you think about taking that congressional pin off your lapel sometimes?
Well, I'm very proud to serve the people of Michigan, and of course our governor was also threatened by political violence a handful of years ago as well, and I don't think putting our heads in the sand is going to be the answer to this. And we've got, and I'm going to continue to call for the rhetoric and violence to be taken very seriously. Certainly the violence. It's a concerning time. I have a lot of questions about who this person is. I had the same questions when the incident happened in Minnesota. He had a hit list. There was a lot of elected officials on that. And it's not so much about me personally. This is also just about our country. The targeted figures and figureheads is awful, but it's what it means for all of us who want to meet constituents or voters, people who want to achieve, an element of the American dream, exercising our democracy, our freedom of speech rights. I've been campaigning all over Michigan, working to meet people where they're at, and that's a beautiful thing. And the minute that starts to get chipped away at, we can't let fear take over. We can't be driven by fear, which leads to anger. And we've got to make sure that everyone hears loud and clear that violence is unacceptable and not to be condoned. And again, our heart goes out to anyone who's been impacted by political violence, the people who were impacted yesterday, and certainly the remaining questions about what happens next.
Well, I've just, I really appreciate the sentiment of your comments, Congresswoman, but the fact of the matter is we do need this to be about you to a certain extent, and Congressman Steil and all the rest of your colleagues up there, because if we don't keep you safe, there's no one there to represent the people. There's also fewer people who are going to raise their hand to run for Congress, and we start running into candidate quality problems. The spiral here could be very real. And with that in mind, I wonder, with the couple of weeks ahead, if Democrats and Republicans will be able to get their heads together on a spending plan to keep the government from shutting down. What are you thinking today?
One of the things that I tell people back home who feel confused or let down or questioning what direction our country is going in, I actually tell them to tune in to the floor of the Congress, go to clerk.house.gov and watch the debates, watch the committee hearings, and you'll see the incredible exercise discourse of democracy taking place. I've taken thousands of votes since I've been become a lawmaker, and I know that when I get bills done, they are bipartisan. They have to be, and in terms of how we're going to negotiate this upcoming spending package, we've got to do it in the way that is the rules and the beautiful way in which our democracy operates through discourse, discussion, and also a commitment that everyone, I believe, who puts up their hand to run for office or who gets elected, should have as a North Star, and hopefully very much likely does, which is what's best for this country. And we have a minority party right now that has a viewpoint. I certainly have disagreed with some of the direction that this current administration's policies have taken us down, particularly with cuts to health care. I want to have that discussion. That's why I show up to work every day. That's why I shoot out of bed in the morning, and I remain eager and hungry for that dialogue. And I've seen it now in my 4 terms in Congress, and knowing that there's been some tough moments that have gotten some national attention, there's also been some good moments where we have been able to pass things like the CHIPS and Science Act, where we have been able to put differences aside to fund the government responsibly or protect our security. And look, that's what I'm going to expect to see happen over these next handful of weeks. And I of course, am always going to be standing up for the people of Michigan. I'm eager to tell Michigan's story in this moment.
You have been known to tell Michigan's story right here on Bloomberg. Congresswoman, it's great to have you back. Thank you for your insights today on what I know is a very delicate matter. And I thank you for your service, along with Congressman Steil, all the Democrats and Republicans here who have raised their hands to come to Washington to represent the people. We have to remember actually what this is all about. Even though things can frequently devolve into shouting and resentment, we do need smart men and women to come here to Washington to do this work. And we try to give them a safe place to talk about it here on Bloomberg. Haley Stevens, Democrat from Michigan's 11th, thank you. And to all the voices, including our panel, who helped us understand more about what was happening today. We're going to learn more over the course of the afternoon. If we get another briefing, if we hear from the president as he makes his way to Yankee Stadium, we'll have more for you on the late edition of Balance of Power. That starts at 5 p.m. Eastern every weekday here on Bloomberg. I'm Joe Mathieu. Big thanks to all of our guests. And I'll meet you a bit later here on Bloomberg TV and radio.